What is up, guys? Welcome back to the StillStraightFire Running Podcast. Today, we've got a really unique guest joining us, ADDRA Labs co-founder Matt Schuster. Launched in 2024, ADDRA's mission is to become the go-to name in endurance recovery nutrition. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Stuart. Really excited to get into it.
Yeah. So, just to start things off, for people who may not be familiar, how would you describe ADDRA in one sentence?
Uh, ADDRA is the go-to post-exercise recovery snack for endurance athletes.
Perfectly said. Well, I'm excited to get into the why behind that. But kind of starting at the beginning of your company, ADDRA officially launched earlier this year in August. But take us back a bit. What were the years leading up to that first product launch like? What problem were you trying to solve, and how did the idea for ADDRA come together?
Yeah, it's been fun. A little history lesson. Before ADDRA started, my partner and I, we were actually part of the brand Power Bar, which you're probably familiar with. He for a bit longer than I. So Eric Zaltis is my co-founder, and he actually ran research and development for Power Bar for quite a few years, going back into the mid 2000s. Right at the core of what is the latest cutting edge research in sports nutrition, and then paired that with what products can actually be created and brought to market. So he's done a ton of exciting stuff in his career at that brand. You can thank him and his team and a few of his colleagues for dual source carbohydrate. He was a big part of that group that actually did the research and proved that you can get more carbohydrate in when you mix glucose and fructose together in that 2-to-1 ratio. Over the years, the Power Bar brand continued on its journey through acquisitions. It was acquired by the largest food company in the world, Nestle. It was then acquired a second time by Post Holdings, and the focus shifted a bit away from innovation within the endurance sports world and was really more focused on mass and general consumer. And right around that time is when two things happened. One, I started working with Eric at the brand, but then also there was this newer research coming about, not in the world of energy or carbohydrate, but in protein. And essentially, what the research was looking into was for the first time, what are the protein needs unique for the endurance athlete? Because for years, they have done tons of research around how much protein people should eat on a daily basis, but it was always focused on strength,
Mhm.
bodybuilders, strength, weightlifting, and things like that. And they didn't necessarily focus as much on the endurance community. And the results were pretty astonishing because it turned out that endurance athletes actually need to eat more protein than strength athletes on a day-to-day basis in terms of grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So to
Interesting.
put some numbers behind that, the strength recommendation for decades, and still to this day, is around 1.6 grams of protein for every kilogram body weight you weigh. The
Mhm.
new recommendations for endurance, and we classify endurance as runners, cyclists, swimmers, triathletes, mountaineering, basically anybody that's doing long, consistent, steady state exercise is now 1.8 to 1.85 grams. So substantially more. And one of the reasons for that is that we actually are burning protein as fuel at a much higher rate than originally thought. So if you go out and do an hour run, you're burning anywhere between 5 closer to 10 grams of protein. Do that math against someone that's training a full load for marathon or for Ironman. They go out and do a 5 hour bike ride, burn the amount of protein that a normal person needs to eat in a day.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a little bit different. So, we've talked about, you've probably heard that term when you compare like calorie burn, how
Hmm.
many calories you burn going out for a 2 hour run. But unlike other sources of food, carbohydrates and fat, there's a storage mechanism in the body for those. Like you can store carbohydrate as glycogen, you can
Hmm.
store fat as body fat. There is no protein storage. So So the only thing that your body can do is break down the protein that already exists. And usually that comes from muscle. What ends up happening is you end up burning certain amino acids. So protein is made up of a combination of amino acids. So you end
Hmm.
up burning certain ones as energy. And then by the end of your workout, you're not only needing to eat to, support the recovery and adaptation, you're also needing to eat to come out of the deficit you just created because you've burned
Interesting.
all that protein as fuel. So you've got
Gotcha.
this new research kind of came about, and then combine that with all the industry tailwinds around protein is the next big thing. Like every podcast you listen to, they're just pounding that drum. But
Hmm.
for some reason within our little endurance world, they never reached us. Nobody's
Yeah.
talking about it. It's still all about like it it depends on where you go. Like triathletes are always probably farther one of the first adopters of new trends within tech and nutrition. But then as you go down the into the specialization of different sports, they're always a bit a step or two behind. So now like
Hmm.
carbohydrates are all the rage right now. And then
Yeah.
you're hearing, you know, starting with ultras, but even marathon, even short course runners are starting to look at that and going, "Oh wow, I'm eating X amount of carbs per hour during training." I saw one of your previous episodes, you guys were talking about that.
Yeah.
3 years ago, literally go back 3 years ago, that was not the case.
Yeah. Not at all.
I remember we went to an event in Randall's Island in New York City. It was a track and field event called Trials of Miles.
Hmm.
And who is it there? Bryce Hopel.
Oh yeah.
He was doing the 800, and we talked to a bunch of athletes. We talked steeplechasers, 3 milers, and the whole time we were there as power bar, and we were like, "Hey, so how are you feeling your training?" And they said, "What?" And these are, a lot of these people are at the top and pointy end of the sport, and it's like, "Oh, I have a banana before, and then I do my run." It's like, "Well, what
Hmm.
about during?" And it's like, "Well, my race is only 3 minutes long." I was like, "Yeah, but you do a 15-mile long run."
Hmm.
And you don't eat. And now, 3 years later, that's en vogue. Everybody's doing carbohydrates to fuel. And protein is that next wave because as
Hmm.
people learn the importance and the role that it plays in the body to fuel those fitness gains, it'll become more clear. So, kind of very long-winded. Back to the why did we start ADDRA? There was a very clear gap because you had this new science pointing towards protein being important, but then essentially a gap of there weren't any companies focused exclusively on protein for endurance, and the community wasn't really well educated and didn't understand the importance and the need for it. So we decided that we could keep doing things and growing Power Bar, or we could go and leave and launch a brand new company and try to solve that problem. And that was a lot more exciting than selling another gel. So
No, absolutely. And no, you touched on that piece about the nutrition so well, whereas years ago it used to be kind of the opposite is how little can you eat to train, and now it's kind of the opposite where we're like you need all these carbohydrates and to fuel your training, and now hopefully we'll see in the upcoming years that transfer more into protein. But what makes ADDRA unique is its emphasis of having a top tier protein and leucine profile to optimize that recovery. So, for someone who isn't really deep into sports nutrition like y'all are, can you break that down? What does that actually mean, and why is leucine such a big deal specifically for endurance athletes?
yeah, it's a good question. So, some sort of baseline education for folks to start. This is the aha moment, at least for myself and a lot of people as they learn, is your body, whether you're training for a marathon, lifting weights, or sitting on the couch, is effectively a factory for creating new body proteins. So, if you look at your arm, inside your arm, there's muscle, there's connective tissue, there's mitochondria, there's capillaries. All of those are made of body proteins. And on a regular basis, the entire system's constantly breaking down and regenerating, making new ones. Whether
Mhm.
you do anything or not, it's always breaking down and regrowing new. When you train, you're essentially giving your body a signal to say, here's a stimulus. This is what I'm going to be doing going forward. So when you make those new proteins, make sure they can handle this stimulus. So you go out for a run, let's say you do an hour run at a 7 minute pace. Hadn't done that previously. Well, you're giving the signal to your body. It's like, this is what I'm going to be demanding going forward. And this is the stimulus I gave you. So make sure I've got enough energy coming from the mitochondria. Make sure I have enough of the slow twitch muscle fibers needed. And all of those signals go in and tell the body what body proteins to make. Fitness is the production of those new proteins. Now, if your body is made of protein, the only way to create new is you need an input of raw ingredients. So
Mhm.
that's the protein that you eat. By consuming protein, your body takes it in, breaks it down, and it breaks it down into each of its components, which are called amino acids. So there's 20 amino acids, and 9 of them are essential, meaning you have to eat them. You can't get them from inside the body. You can't create them on your own. So you
Mhm.
have to actually eat them in. You need all of them in to make different combinations. If you think of them like letters of the alphabet and you want to create, you know, new quadricep muscles, there's a combination. So you're going to take those amino acids broken down into each individual piece and then reassembled into those new body proteins. One of the amino acids is called leucine. Leucine's interesting because it's one of those building blocks. It's one of those alphabet letters, but it also is the signal caller. And essentially what happens is when you eat a steak or a protein bar or a protein serving, your blood leucine level starts to increase. And as that increases, essentially it is triggering all the mechanisms for recovery. It's not so much on off, but more like a dimmer switch. And the higher the leucine level gets, the higher the dimmer switch goes up, and the more adaptations your body starts to make through the process called muscle protein synthesis. Now, there's been a few studies that show what does that level need to be. And really what it comes down to is if you can get 2.5, but closer to 3 grams of leucine in your serving of protein, you can max that dial out for that serving.
Mhm.
So that's what we did when we formulated the ADDRA bar is we took a standard serving of protein, so 20 grams. It's pretty common across all protein bars. But then independently, we increased the leucine level. So typically you would have, you know, call it 2 grams or less of leucine in that bar. So if you go to buy a bar off the shelf, depending on the source, you're not, if there's a 20-gram bar, it's going to be hard to get to that 3 grams of leucine. So we've kind of shortcut it, boosted the leucine level, so you get that optimal recovery dose. And if you compare it, it's essentially the same recovery benefit as if you took in a 30-gram serving of whey protein.
Mhm.
So larger serving, but we've been able to truncate it down and make it more efficient and perform better.
Interesting. So, when should an athlete be using this product? Would that be like post-workout, before bed? You even mentioned that now we're getting into new research that says we're utilizing proteins as more of a fuel source. So, have you ever used this before a workout or anything?
So there's a few places. So number one would be the most important thing is starting to adopt a nutrition approach that gives your body the total protein that it needs throughout the day.
Hmm.
And that's that 1.85 grams per kilogram body weight. So, for me, I'm about 72 kilograms. So you do the math, I need around 100, between 140 and 160 grams of protein per day. You're not just going to get that all in one sitting. It's not, that would be a big meal.
Yeah.
So the key is spacing it out. And there's actually some science behind this where if you can dose it in 2 to 3 hour increments throughout the day, that is the best way for your body to absorb it and to utilize it. So being able to get 20 to 30 grams at breakfast, pre-workout, 20, 30 grams right after your workout, lunch, dinner, and then maybe a snack before bed. Those are the key eating occasions of when you want to try and get. It doesn't always work perfectly. Life isn't perfect, but Those are the key opportunities to get that protein intake in. So you're really fueling all those adaptations consistently throughout the day. The bar we've created, it can slot into a number of those occasions, but really it's meant to be a protein snack. So this is
Mhm.
not meal replacement. You're not just going to switch over and just eat ADDRA bars instead of real food. You
Yeah.
100% need to be eating real food, fruits and vegetables, lean meats, good grains, but it can be used to boost your intake. So, we have a lot of athletes, and even myself will use it as a breakfast boost. So if I'm having a bowl of cereal, I may, grab a bar as well on top of that. Give me that protein bump to start the day. The key eating occasion for this bar is right after your workout.
Hmm.
You want to actually get it within 30 minutes. They say an hour, but if you can get it within 30 minutes to when you finish working out, that's going to get all of those amino acids in so your body can shuttle them where they need to go. And then it's also great for a snack replacement, either middle of the day or end of the day. Instead of
Gotcha.
reaching for the cookies or the bag of chips, this gives you that 20 grams plus 3 grams of leucine. There's also some new science around protein intake right before bed and actually getting some in, and it can boost your recovery while you sleep overnight. So we have a number of the athletes talk about they use this to replace their dessert
Yeah.
instead of grabbing, a sweet treat from the freezer. They'll grab a bar and use that just before they go to sleep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As when you mentioned that about replacing your afternoon snack, got me excited for the upcoming flavors to try when those are supposed to be pretty darn good. But what kind of changes should someone expect to feel if like they implement these bars and just the overall 1.8 grams per kilogram? What changes would someone expect to see if their recovery is actually improving? Like, what kind of benefits for both a triathlon or a runner specifically?
Absolutely. It's a great question. So we actually have a study that we use when we do our webinar trainings where they actually did a assessment with a handful of runners, and it was only a week long. And what they did was they had the runners go through a training camp where they did 4 days of hard training. Uh, at the start of the week, they did a 5K time trial, and at the end of the week, they did a 5K time trial. And then they broke them up into three groups, a low protein group, a middle group, and then a high protein group. That high was that 1.85. What they saw was that the all but the high protein group saw an increase in 5K time performance, so it's
Mhm.
faster time, less muscle soreness, and even greater knee extension strength. So they measured, kind of leg extension. And whereas both the other groups saw decreases across all those metrics. So even just a week intervention, 1 week, there was measurable directional increases in performance. The thing is that it's not like caffeine or even carbohydrates to that degree where you take this and you feel the effects instantaneously.
Yeah.
This is more of a systemic approach where what you're doing is you're properly fueling the body. And it's not just the bars by themselves, it's the bars coupled with, eating that, protein recommendation.
Hmm.
Bars are a tool to help you get to that the optimal level, and then the added leucine is to make sure that that post-exercise window is as dialed as you possibly can. But less muscle soreness over time. Overall, you'll just start to feel more durable because your body is able to support and make all the adaptations and do all of that healing. Um, and then over the course of, weeks, couple months, 6 months, you'll see a noticeable difference.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting that you put it like that. Like it's so easy for someone to buy into the carbohydrate train because you can immediately see it working. You can feel those benefits add up. But this is more like a
Oh
supplement
yeah.
where if you start taking your iron, you're not going to feel good the next day, but over a couple of weeks you'll realize like, oh wow, I guess this actually did help. But you and your
Yeah,
co-founder
yeah.
Eric Zaltis, you guys both come from triathlon backgrounds. So, how have y'all's experiences as endurance athletes yourselves shape the way that you guys think about recovery?
Well, caveat, so Eric is a current triathlete, but he was actually a cyclist to start.
Okay.
He has quite a story history. He was a pro bike racer, a national champion in the team time trial back in the early to I won't say the time, he'll be mad at me, but a little bit ago. But yeah, as athletes ourselves, we eat, sleep, and breathe it. So it's
Hmm.
not just a science experiment. And in fact, we are the initial guinea pig. So we test out and use everything for better or worse before anyone else gets a chance to try it. And it's good because we can see firsthand when something is really not going to work. Like I will tell you, our first go about mixing and boosting leucine, we actually started with a powder and we were just mixing the raw ingredients together. And then I would go out and do a hard run session, come back and try and chug this thing. And it was horrific. They couldn't get it down. And the reason was that leucine, as a standalone supplement, it comes in powder form, horrifically tasting. Like it is rancid. And
Yeah.
that's how it is. And so making that taste good is one of the biggest benefits of the bar itself is because
Hmm.
we were able to use a flavor system that could mask that. And then similarly, as we're starting to experiment with new formats and new products, we get to test them in a real life setting before they actually go out to market so we can see, its effects on the gut, its effects on sleep, its effects on training performance,
Hmm.
palatability, how well it stores, how easily it transfers. Like when we started with powder, we eventually moved to bar because powders are just not as convenient. When you think about who this product was made for, it's made for the person on the go that's trying to fit training into a super busy schedule. Going to a morning workout at the track or running to the weight room in between meetings or classes or picking up your kids, you're not going to have a magic bullet in your car or you're not going to have a cooler with everything cold, but you can have a bar that's just sitting there just waiting for you at the perfect time.
Yeah, no, that absolutely. As someone who is currently training as well, it's been so helpful to just put 4 or 5 of those bars in my bag at one time. I can just immediately get that in as I'm walking out of the gym.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then, like you mentioned, it doesn't just end there. It's not like you can just have one snack right after and you're set with your protein needs. It's like, no, you can go home, drive home, then I have time to take a shower before I get a full meal in. But essentially, it just makes the process a whole lot easier to get started. But you mentioned the trial and error process. How long did it take from like y'all's first product launch to when you're actually able to release it?
Ooh, good question. So we started working on it in September of 2023,
Hmm.
and then our official launch was August 2024. So it was just under a year.
Hmm.
And that was full R&D, um, we had creating the company, creating the brand, creating the packet, like all the nuances that go into starting a company. And yeah, we didn't actually have functional product, like a real life product in our hands until February of
Hmm.
24. So the company was around for a full 6 months and didn't actually have a commercial product. We hadn't even tasted it ourselves yet.
Yeah.
We did a big R&D day in that January where we went into the lab and we tried out all these different flavors. Um, I think my record was we probably tasted 120 different bars and probably consumed in terms of full bars, I don't know, like 40, 2.5 day period.
Man.
It was a lot of protein.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's not just like, oh, go make a chocolate chip cookie dough bar. It's all right, here's the chocolate chip cookie dough bar with this much, sweetener and this much chocolate chips and this much protein. So like every bar had 4 or 5 variations to it. And then you have to go in and pick the one that you think will land best.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, so most of my previous guests have talked about the daily grind of just training as an athlete, but starting a company comes with its own kind of grind. And it's really just a long-term endeavor. You have to buy into the process and just keep going. Kind of like the process of utilizing these protein stores. It's not going to happen overnight. But were there moments when you questioned whether this was going to work or if you guys were just doing this and like, did you ever think about giving up? What was the hardest part mentally throughout that whole process when things are so hard to see? It's not an overnight fix. You just have to put your nose to the grindstone and work every single day.
Oh man, how much time you got? We could write a book with all the things that we'll say, we call it the things that we learned as opposed
Hmm.
to things that went wrong. No, I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. Starting a company is basically a front row seat into the unknown. You have no idea. Even today, like we've come a long way, but we don't know what the future holds. We don't know what your view only goes out so much and it moves at a glacial pace. Like when
Hmm.
you first start, you can't see your feet.
Yeah.
Now we can see like, I don't know, a couple months ahead. So we know
Hmm.
what's going to happen. But then after that, and then as the company gets older, you can start to see a bit further. But I mean, there's been countless days where Eric and I sat down and we're like, where are we going? How's this gonna work, right? Like, we had one. So our first formulation, actually, this is an interesting story. We originally launched. We had two types of bars. So we had the bars we have today, which are the plant-based, and that was the chocolate cherry and the apple pie. But the original cookie dough and peanut butter were whey protein based, so they were milk, because we
Hmm.
thought it would be good to have options for both dietary preferences. Well, for some reason, the whey bars just turned and spoiled a lot faster than we had thought. So don't normally over time, like you make a bar and it has a shelf life usually around a year. One of the reasons for that shelf life is not necessarily that it's gone bad or you get sick from it, but it's not the quality of it has gone down. It's gotten a little bit harder. Maybe the flavor is dulled out. And we had 1 year shelf lives, but the whey bars for some reason would just turn within 3 to 4 months, and we didn't know why. And so when we launched, we had to really push our plant-based bars, and we ended up actually reformulating and changing everything over. And it wasn't by choice to just go full plant and vegan. It was, well, that formula just didn't work.
Yeah.
But that was a big thing because we had a huge supply of those bars that we in fact, just made the choice of we can't sell these. Like we can't consciously say, hey, these are not that good, but let's try and say they're good and sell them anyway. So we ended up donating a pretty good chunk of that first production, um, and reformulating, rebuilding. And that was a big one because we're a self-funded company, and that was a huge amount of cost. So not just amount of cost, but also potential income
Hmm.
because we took basically half our production and said, all right, we're not going to be able to get any of that money because we're not going to sell those bars. We're going to double down on the ones we do know are good, and then we're
Hmm.
going to reformulate the original flavors. So that was a that was a hard one.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Well,
sure
that
that
was
was.
we lost a few nights sleep on that one.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a very hard pill to swallow, but it really speaks to the integrity of the company. You guys really, you're not going to promote a product that you guys don't believe in, and
Yeah.
you're only going to promote the best version of what you guys have created. And that's what really separates ADDRA bars from what other companies that I've seen. But you mentioned kind of doing some of the product testing on your own, and hearing that you ate 40 bars in 2.5 days and can still stomach these things speaks also highly of the bars. But how did you balance training, work, and building the company, especially at those starting phases when it's so hard? There's just so much work you're doing. How do you manage training on top of that?
So I'll add a fourth dimension into that because that's the one that actually is the hardest. So if you didn't have to sleep, you could have a family, have a job, and train, and you have all the time in the world. The
Hmm.
issue is you need to have enough sleep. Otherwise, all three of those things fall off.
Yeah.
And I have experimented with different levels of sleep and different patterns of sleep and trying to break it up and trying to do big chunks. But ultimately, the having a really strong discipline around getting the right nutrition in and getting enough sleep allows you to have the energy and ultimately be able to recover appropriately
Hmm.
from all of the stimulus. Because at the end of the day, it's no matter what you're doing, you have one bank of stress,
Hmm.
global stress. And your job takes some, training takes some, life, social, family, all of it is pulling from the same pot. So it doesn't matter if you went lighter on one thing and heavier on another, it's still coming down the same amount. So making sure that you're properly recovering
Hmm.
um, and getting the adequate sleep and nutrition is priority number one. Number two is then becoming a wicked at scheduling. And it's funny. So my previous life, I worked in advertising, and if you looked at my calendar, it would be back to back to back to back to back, just work meetings all the way through. That
Hmm.
was it. And then I remember somebody came up to me and said, "What's more important, dinner with your kids or that meeting with that client?" And I said, "Oh, dinner with my kids, no question." And they said, "Why isn't it on your calendar?"
Hmm.
I said, "I don't have a good answer for that."
Yeah.
So, and it's all of a sudden it was that aha moment of like, oh, things that are important, no matter what bucket they come from, should be scheduled. Training came in the same way. So at the start of the week, I'll go in and I'll look at what are the anchor things that are in there, whether it's like a family event, work event, and then plot in training and then treat it the same way you would a work meeting or a family engagement and say, no, from 7 to 9, I'm blocked off because I know that after that, I don't have another window of time. So that's the training block. You have to get it all in there. And sometimes you have to break it up. And obviously, it's not perfect and things move around, but being wicked at scheduling and actually scheduling all aspects of your life is the only way that it works. And it's
That's so
still,
interesting.
it's still burning the candle on both ends. Don't get me wrong. I
Yeah.
haven't figured it out, but I'm at least I've slowed down the burning a little bit.
Getting closer to
Yeah.
figuring it out. No, that's so true. My coach in undergrad at college would always mention how important routines are, and I never agreed with him until I broke that routine for the first time and realized how much harder it was to get in your training when you go home for a break and all of a sudden you don't have classes, but somehow you've lost time. And it's
Hmm.
because you just become lazy with everything and you'll postpone leaving the house for an extra 30 minutes to an hour. But yeah, scheduling is so crucial, and especially if you have a very busy day to day like y'all do.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I do have one more question on the protein. A lot of runners out there seem to be scared of having protein. They think it's going to make them too heavy and a little bit scared to kind of build muscle. What would you say to an athlete like that? How is protein going to help them in just a short few sentences?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the first one is the adaptations you're gonna get from the body are a direct result of the training stimulus you're giving it. So if you're going out and training as a marathon runner, that's going to put very different demands on the body than if you're going to become a strongman competitor,
Hmm.
right? You're putting different stress, so you're going to develop those unique body proteins. So slow twitch muscle fibers, capillary density, mitochondria. That's what the body is going to demand to be created.
Hmm.
Versus if all of a sudden you switch tomorrow and you were like, all right, I'm going to go do high rocks, so I need to get strong and big. I'm going to start a strength routine, and you start doing, 1 rep max deadlifts, overhead presses, and things like that. It's telling the body, hey, we don't need that other stuff, those endurance proteins. We actually need strength proteins. So we need type 1 muscle fibers, contractile proteins, and things like that. We also need to bulk up the muscle tendons and size to be able to support the load. And that's you are a byproduct of the stimulus you give it. As far as bulking up in terms of size, that's less to do about protein and more to do about caloric intake overall. So, if you're in a caloric surplus, you're going to gain weight. If you're in a caloric deficit, you're going to lose weight. You ideally you want to be in balance, unless you're doing some sort of advanced body composition optimization. That's a whole different can of worms. But high protein does not necessarily equate to bulking up in bigger muscles. It bulks more durable, more repaired, and more remodeled muscles so that you can continue with and continue to support the adaptations that you're giving the body.
Interesting. Yeah, so currently we've spoken on pretty much two forms of recovery, which is one, getting that protein in, and two is sleep, as you mentioned, trying to balance everything. What would you say to an athlete who's serious about getting more out of their training, but might be overlooking their recovery right now?
Oh man, your the two most impactful levers you have for recovery are sleeping and eating. Like all the other stuff is the marginal gains. Yes, you can get benefit from incorporating other supplements and things like that and soft tissue work, but at the end of the day, it's, the majority of the workload is sleeping and eating. Get those two things right, you're going to be in pretty good shape and you'll start to see, notable improvements in how you feel, your level of energy throughout the day, your performance in training, your performance on race day. So I would highly recommend anyone out there that's, not put an emphasis on those two to at least start educating themselves, learning a bit more, but, all the way up to the most elite level. There's a reason why Tour de France teams ship in their own mattresses to hotels instead of relying on the mattresses the hotels have. And it's
Okay.
because they know how important sleep is. And
Yeah.
there's also a reason that there's a full-scale chef and nutritionist on staff for every team year round. It's because they know how important nutrition is. Sure, they may slug a ketone here and there, but at the end of the day, it's sleeping and it's eating.
Yeah. No, that's so true. It's easy for runners to both, or for all athletes to either skip the 1% or to focus too much on the 1%. But you really have to optimize the 99% of really just get in, do your training, eat, sleep, and after that, then you can start focusing on the 1%. But so many times athletes just merge the two and make it kind of a 50-50 balance between all
Yeah.
the fancy recovery tools. Um,
Well, the 1%'s the fun part, right? Those are all the cool,
exactly.
flashy things.
So you
The
can post on
99%,
social media.
yeah, exactly. The 99% is basically eat your vegetables.
Hmm.
That's not exciting and fun.
Yeah,
It's what's actually going to make a difference.
true. The boring work pays off.
Yeah.
But just finally, just to close things out, obviously you guys are releasing these two new product flavors as of tomorrow, I believe. But what's next for ADDRA? After these two bars released, do you guys have anything upcoming in the works, or do you just want to spread this knowledge about the importance of protein for endurance athletes?
No, we have quite a bit going on. So obviously the biggest and most soonest upcoming news is the release of these two new bars. So we were 18 months into being in market. This is our first expansion of our product line. So we have chocolate fudge brownie and s'mores,
Mhm.
two very highly demanded flavors from the ADDRA customer base. So we're very excited to be releasing those. They're really good. I Right now the top selling flavors are chocolate chip cookie dough, but I
Mhm.
imagine that these two are probably going to take that spot pretty quickly. And then from there, the main focus in 2026 is going to be really expanding to own that recovery nutrition category within endurance. And that's not just a product-based game plan, but it's also a lot about education and understanding. A lot of stuff we talked about, most people are not aware of the role protein plays in the body, how amino acids play their role, and then what makes a difference if you're taking, a soy protein source versus a whey versus real food, and doing a lot of education. So we'll be doing a lot of content through our social media, through our website, working with the teams that we partner with, and then ultimately we have a line of products that we're going to be rolling out that expand beyond bars,
Hmm.
still in the protein space, but more to come on that. So nothing we can share just yet.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. And this is a super insightful conversation. I learned a ton about the benefits of protein and leucine and even sleep. I mean, everyone knows about the importance of sleep, but just super insightful to get the full picture of recovery. And I'm really excited to continue implementing your product into my training and hopefully over the long term seeing some substantial benefits.
Love it, man. Well, thanks again for having us. And if so, the one plug I will give is for anyone that wants to give the bars a try, we actually have a calculator right on our website. So if you go into adderalabs.com and click on Daily Protein Calculator, it'll use a lot of that new science, and you can plug in your body weight, your training volume, your dietary preference, and it'll give you a target based on that science of how much protein you should eat. But it'll also give you an option to get a free sample pack, so you actually can get 4 bars for free. We do ask that everyone covers the shipping fee. It's small; it goes straight through to UPS. We don't keep any of it, but you can try all 4 flavors, and we actually are going to be sneaking a couple of the new flavors in there as well. So it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if you go there, addrelabs.com, daily protein calculator, and you can give them a try.
Well, sweet. Matt, I can say myself, that's actually how I was introduced to the company. So
Yeah.
I can vouch by that. But yeah, thank you again for joining us and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, man.